Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the car guru. I'm really curious about something. Do you have a favorite restaurant? You know, I do. As far as, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I am going to tell you what it is. It's Cheesecake Factory. They're everywhere. That's my favorite restaurant. And I can tell you why. And a lot of it has to do with just the atmosphere. I love the atmosphere of the Cheesecake Factory. But I really love their food. I'm a little bit overwhelmed by their menu. I mean, it's like a tsunami of choices. I like that. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the first Cheesecake Factory I ever ate at. It was in San Francisco on Union Square. You had to run an elevator to get up to it. That was the first Cheesecake Factory, and I said, man, I wish they could get one of these near me. Well, they built one in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we go there quite often. Great cheesecake, by the way. You know, if you're going to call yourself the Cheesecake Factory, wouldn't you think that all that you would sell would be cheesecake? But no, they do have a wide selection of cheesecake, and it's wonderful. I mean, when we come through Knoxville on the way to our home in Greenville, Tennessee, we stop at the Cheesecake Factory and get some cheesecake. And I guess it'll always be my favorite restaurant. But as far as in the Tri-Cities where we live, there's one that I could name is my favorite. But I'm not going to name it. But the question on the table right now is, what would make you leave your favorite restaurant and never go back? How solid is your relationship with that restaurant? You know, you could say this about other people that you do business with. Let me think of one. Okay, plumber. You know, how solid is your relationship with your plumber? Your dry cleaner. Where you get gas, your 7-Eleven or whatever you want to call it. Your car dealer or your car dealer's service department. You know, you buy a car maybe once every 4, 5, 10 years, 15 years for some people. But if you stay loyal to that dealership and get all your service work, I mean, that's the connection. That's what keeps you coming back is their service. Or runs you off because of, something happens. Or you think it's cheaper someplace else. I've talked many times about the 5 attributes that differentiate businesses. And I'm going to talk about how they operate, how they handle their inventory, purchasing, all the back end stuff. I'm talking about what the public perceives. There are 5 attributes: price, product quality, service, access, and experience. Now, this class that I went to at the University of Tennessee, it was very interesting to me. I'd like to take it over. The professor's probably not around anymore. But it was in Glocker, which is it was the building where the business school was. Now, I think they tore it all down except for one wall. They kept one wall so that they could remember their history. Now I think it's Haslam School of Business, which, it's named to Haslam because they own Pilot and also the Cleveland Browns and several other professional sports teams. But the Haslam family, yeah. So they paid for the business school, and so that's what it's called now. But that's where I took a class called Buyer Behavior. It was my senior level course. I was a marketing major. Dr. Richard Reisenstein was the professor. And it was very interesting. They talked about, why people behave the way they do and how that drives them to certain types of businesses. And we didn't talk about this particular book that I read called The Myth of Excellence. I would recommend that you read it. It talks about these, it's the first exposure I ever had to this concept of 5 attributes that define the business. But I was just thinking about just the restaurant or the car dealer. What does it take for you to defect? Now, as far as a restaurant is concerned, one food poisoning event, and I'm done. What about you? Would that keep you from going back? Boy, it would be me. I've tried to get my wife to go back to this restaurant. Not too far from here. I'm not going to say what it was, but she got food poisoning when she was right at 9 months pregnant. And I've never seen anybody as miserable as she was. And I don't know, that was probably, let's see, that was with Audra, and Audra is 38 years old now. 38. And I asked her the other day, I said, honey, is 38 years enough? What do you mean? I said, do you want to go back to such and such restaurant? Heck no. I'll never go back there. So I would feel the same way about food poisoning. Would you? What if it just took you a long time to get your food? Would that keep you from ever going back? Probably wouldn't me, because it's taken a while to get food at my favorite restaurant. It's just because they're busy. You know, I have this. Do you have this built-in clock in your head that tells you when it's been too long? Boy, I must. I can't tell you what it is. I really don't know the exact amount of time, but I'd say it's approaching probably 20 minutes. That's just beyond that. I'm starting to squirm a little bit, but that won't keep me from going back. You know, food quality goes down, I'm out. You know, but before I do it, and if I have a problem, I'm going to call the manager over, because I want them to get things right. I don't want to be run off. I like the restaurant. I'm in a groove, and I like it. Will I get bored with it after a period of time? Yes. You know what restaurants do then, don't you? They change the menu. They upgrade. And there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can change the experience at a restaurant, right? You can change the quality of the food. You can change the pricing. You can change the level of service. Those attributes are changeable by a business. If they stay the same, over a period of time, people are going to get bored with it. So why do you leave a car dealer? Well, a lot of people will buy a new car, and let's say they get so many free oil changes, or they buy a maintenance package, and they will continue to go back to that dealership. But nationwide average is that about 52% of them will stop going to the dealership. 48% will continue to come back. Why isn't that 90%? It's usually not because of price. A lot of people say, well, you know, it's a whole lot cheaper to get your car worked on at an independent shop. No, it's not. They're using aftermarket parts. If they use OEM parts, the cost is going to be similar. The cost of labor is based on a labor time guide that all independent shops use, all new car dealers use. The labor rate may be different. You know, the dealership may charge $120 an hour or $140 an hour. Independent shop may charge $80 an hour. Why is there a difference there? Well, it could have to do with the overhead that the dealership has, or that they have more modern tools, better equipment, the latest training. They have a lot more invested, and hopefully they do a better job. There's a lot of you out there saying, no, I get better service from an independent shop. That's probably why you defected. That's why you don't go to the dealership anymore. Some people may say it's access. I'd rather just go to the fast lube place, because I think about it, I'm shopping, oh, I need to get my oil change. I just go get in line, get my oil change, and that's something I can check off the list. That's very appealing. But what about quality? What are you getting there? See, the reason a lot of people go to those places is for the convenience. They don't think about quality because they don't think quality matters. They think it's okay to put some cheap aftermarket filter on there and use oil that's very generic, that may not even be the right grade or, the right viscosity for their particular vehicle. So, they just don't perceive it as a big deal. They don't know about all the things that are supposed to be checked and adjusted on that vehicle. And so they believe that just going through the fast lube place is okay, and having a some young person with very little experience working on their vehicle. That's not where I'm going to get mine worked on. I mean, if I buy a Honda, I'm going to Johnson City Honda. If I live in Johnson City or Kingsport Honda, whatever it's called, I'm going to go back to the dealer because I know that they have the training and the expertise and the OEM parts and, I don't mind calling and making an appointment and waiting for a little while. But what if I go in to get my oil change and it takes 3 hours? That's going to run me off. Over time, I'm going to go tell them. I'm going to say, listen, that was a terrible experience. Thanks for doing my car, but it shouldn't take 3 hours to do an oil change. And see what happens the next time. I may give them another time. It's not like food poisoning. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I am back. Did you buy any SpaceX stock? Some of you are saying, yeah, I got in on that. Well, I thought about it, and I just don't see an advantage of betting against Elon Musk. So I bought a very little bit. I bought 58 shares, and he actually did the transaction around lunchtime. And by the time the market closed, I had made $1,145.50. That's pretty good return for 4 hours. But the thing about that is it can go down a whole lot faster than it went up. It's going to be a very volatile ride. But if I had gotten in on Tesla real early, Tesla made a lot of people millionaires. So, but the reason I bring that up is because, again, it's experience. I called my broker, and he answers when I call, and I said, I want some SpaceX. And he said, you don't need to do that. I said, I know I don't need to do it, but I want to do it. And I'm not going to do a lot. And he said, okay, how much? And I told him, and he said, okay. And boom, it was done. It was the access that I had to the market was phenomenal at just about any time. Now, the problem with access is that sometimes it's too easy and it'll get you in trouble, right? That's why we need good advice. We need people who can coach us. He said, you don't need to do that. I said, I know I want to. If I had done a whole lot more than that, he said, Lenny, come on. He would have said, let's just not do that. Because, we're kind of partners. You know why we're partners? Because he gets a percentage of my entire portfolio every year. I don't know when they take it, but he gets a percentage of it. It's a very small percentage. It's like 1.5% or something like that. But so is he motivated to swell my portfolio? Yes, he is. It's nice to have somebody to be a partner with you. And that's what I think a lot of businesses can be. I think when we have relationships with a car dealer like me, then you've got a resource there, or a plumber, or an electrician, or a lawyer, or a neighbor, who knows a lot about life and in general, can give you good advice, good life experience. I think we all need that. I think there's a problem. This brings up another thing I was thinking about the other day, is that the young people, that are around 30 or less, they don't listen to older people because they don't engage with older people, and they definitely, since they don't engage, they don't have the opportunity to listen and learn the lessons that these older people have already experienced. Well, it's a different world. Yeah, it's a different world. There's a lot of differences, but there's way more similarities. The only thing that's different is the technology, which gets in the way of true relationship too often. I like seeing the same friendly faces at the grocery store. I don't get that same feeling when the Amazon truck drives up the driveway and drops off the box full of toilet paper. It's just, You can make it an experience. I love walking past the fruit. I always buy something extra at the grocery store, don't you? Something that I didn't intend on buying. And that's probably a good reason to order from Amazon. You know, why is Amazon successful? Well, you can order something this afternoon, it'll be delivered tomorrow. You know, is that a great experience? Yeah, pretty good. Is the pricing better? I don't know. Is it? I guess you can shop around and find out. Is the product any better? No, because you can get the same product. You know, if you go to Best Buy, you can buy a Canon camera just like you can order the same thing on Amazon. What's the advantage of Amazon? Because you don't have to get in your car and go to Best Buy. You don't have to find a place to park. Access is better online. What's going to happen to the car business when my kids are my age? You know, they're working in the dealership. They're in their, approaching 40. Maybe a couple of them are over. What's it going to be like? How are we going to compete? Well, we're in a relatively small town, 16,000, 17,000 population, but we're surrounded by bigger cities. Access is pretty easy, as far as cars. Carvana will deliver used cars to your house. There's no new cars or new car companies like Carvana that bypass the dealer, with the exception of some of these EV companies like Tesla. When you buy a Tesla, you pay MSRP. There is no discount. They may have some deals out there, some special lease deals or financing deals, but you're paying MSRP. If you go to Champion Chevrolet and buy a Silverado, you pay an MSRP? No. Nobody's going to do that. Well, some people might, but no, you're going to negotiate that down. They're probably selling them at invoice right now minus the rebate. They probably have a dock fee that you have to pay, but the experience is probably going to be good. Tim Copenhaver and Andy Dietrich have anything to do with it. They're going to make it a good experience. It's a beautiful place, but you do have to park. You do have to engage with salespeople, and a lot of people don't like to do that. So I don't know what's going to happen to the business. We're going to have to make it a very smooth, easy process for people to buy cars. But we're still going to have to fix them. There's still going to be a business case for a service department. People are going to wreck them. A case for a body shop. The cars are going to have to be, like I said, from a maintenance standpoint, they'll still probably have to change the oil and stuff like that. Even EVs are requiring a lot of maintenance, a lot more than they thought they would. So I don't think car dealers are going to go away, but we're going to have to evolve for sure. Is it going to take a salesperson, a knowledgeable salesperson, to sell a car? I think so. I don't think it's not going to be like McDonald's when you walk up to a kiosk. I mean, some young people that are so used to their cell phones and stuff, that'll be fine with them. They don't want to talk to a human being anyway, unless it's in their friend group. But you're going to have to adapt in order to survive. Is AI going to be a big part of our business? Absolutely, it already is. AI can answer our phones. Right now, we have a telephone operator, but are we going to need one when AI gets really good? No. Probably not. Are we going to need an office, like somebody to input documents? No, we don't need that now. We can scan our documents and they can automatically be posted to our books with AI. Now, do I still have office workers? Yeah, we do. And we'll keep them for a long time. But at some point, we won't need any of that staff. What about parts department? Will we need staff? Probably not. We'll need somebody to stock parts and bring the boxes out of there, but as far as ordering, it could all be automated. And is that a good thing? I don't know. I guess I won't be around to find out. I'll be back in just a minute. I went back to I'm going to call it a 7-Eleven. It's not a 7-Eleven, but I went back to it, swore I'd never go back. It's in different hands now. It was a Weigel's, and I was putting gas in a gasoline can for my lawnmower, and the hose burst on the pump and squirted gasoline into my eyes, all over me. I was soaked with gasoline. Thank goodness nobody was smoking nearby, but I couldn't get them to really do anything for me. I ended up talking to the insurance company and had to work out a deal, and I just wanted them to pay for my emergency room visit, initially, that is. But because they stonewalled me, and it was just not pleasant. I don't think that they realized what this did to me and how traumatizing it was. I got over it pretty quickly, but my eyes hurt, and I didn't feel like going to the emergency room that day. And all they had to do was say, "Sure, Mr. Lawson, we'll pay your emergency room bill." But they didn't do anything, and they wouldn't call me back. And so I called my lawyer, and I said, "Call these people and see if you can get them to do something." Well, they did something all right. It cost them a lot more. It cost their insurance company a lot more. My hospital bill was, I think, $1,100. They paid me $5,000 because they didn't respond. And when you have an issue with a business and they don't respond, then you do one of two things. You sue them, depending on the situation, or you never go back. I went to the PALS school. I've talked about PALS. It's a regional drive-through food place, fast food, if you're not from this area. I went to their school that they had. It was called the Lean Mean Profit Machine. They actually had a school that other businesses could come to. One of the businesses that came down from Canada was A&W Root Beer. That's actually the number one or number two fast food chain in Canada, and they send all their managers to the PALS school in Kingsport. I don't even know if they have the school still going or not. But one of the points that they made was that the average person will spend over $30,000 in their lifetime on fast food. And so what they wanted every employee that works at a window at PALS to see in their mind $30,000 tattooed across the forehead of every customer that comes into that place. And when you get their order wrong, think about that $30,000 and losing it over accidentally putting cheese on a hamburger. How quickly are you going to respond to that mistake, and what are you going to do to make it right for the customer so that you don't lose the potential of that $30,000? See, that's what businesses, they lose sight of. Somebody gets their order wrong, or somebody comes into a dealership and, they don't get their tags quick enough, and they get really frustrated, and they go back and they still don't have their tags, and nobody told them why they don't have their tags. And it's because the previous customer had a payoff on their car, and it just took a while to get the title. And if they just explained that, the customer would be exasperated, but because they didn't, they lose that customer for life. And there's a whole lot more tattooed on their forehead than $30,000 when it comes to the car business. Well, that's my rant for the day, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about your car life, feel free to send me a text, 423-552-2020, or you can send me an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.